And this one, I know, let me see, I think I had a little glitch there, but I am live. But yes, this will be the second of three. And I'll just keep my eye out for my co-host of the day. I know she wanted to talk to me about a specific topic, and that will be Kickstarter for authors. So let's see. I see her there. See if she sees my invite. Hey.
Hello. I see your icon. I don't see your smiling face.
Yes, I am looking for the button that I'm supposed to push to show my face, and I don't see it.
Yeah, well,
Oh, I found
I
it.
wish I could tell you what to do, but I am very bad at tech, and so I know this happens periodically. And there you go. Yay! Fantastic. How
I
are you?
obviously am not super handy with technology either.
Neither am I. Neither am I. So, how are you?
Doing good. I actually just got done with some writing sprints over Zoom, so I'm like in the headspace for this conversation. Perfect
Good.
timing.
Good. And but yeah, what I'll do is because I know you're working your way through your first
Hmm.
storyline, is that correct? Okay,
Yes.
so how about this? How about you let us know who you are and what kind of genre you're writing, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. So yeah, I am working on my debut novel. It's a YA fantasy fiction, and I'm super excited. The way I describe it to people, I'm also a Disney nerd. I should throw that
That's
out there.
great.
If you've seen Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what I compare it to. The strong female lead. There's in my book, there is a potential love interest, but that's not the focus. And that was one of the things that's really important to me in this story is that she has her mission, her goals that she is accomplishing above seeking a relationship.
Mm-hmm. That's
So,
really cool. I love
yeah.
that. And because you're comparing it to that story, can I ask, are there going to be dragons in this fantasy or are there going to be other things? I don't know if I'm allowed to know, but I just
Oh
wanted to
no, there
ask. You
definitely
made
are.
that comparison.
So I actually don't have dragons.
Okay.
Aside from like your, what I would say, like, more typical fantasy fiction creatures, I've been aiming for more like historical, mythical creatures. So
Okay.
there's
I
like a
like that.
naga, there's a
Oh yeah.
sphinx, we've got a griffin, a phoenix. Of course, you got to throw a troll in there.
Of
Um,
course.
Basically, my version of Bigfoot. Just a
I
bunch
love
of different things that kind of playing with the idea of, oh, this is kind of where these ideas could have come from. Because it's based like BCE times.
that. Okay.
So it's hard to describe. I don't want to make it sound like it's
Hey, no,
Neanderthal
no.
times, but think like torches, parchment and like old school
Of course.
writing. Not even like into medieval times yet.
Yeah. Okay. So precursor to medieval, which I know, and I have the habit of doing the same thing of being a fantasy author and writing uh, books, even though they're not set on Earth at all. They're set in their own worlds, their own universes. But I kind of always put them in realities where technology is usually medieval, and I think a lot of fantasy authors do that. So it's always interesting when I hear someone who is setting, the stage in a totally different kind of era. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
The precursor. I love that. And may I also know, or and the listeners as well, how far are you through your original draft? Because it can be a process. I know. I remember.
Right. So, I started writing a few times and scrapped it. Free writing has been disastrous for me. I am very ADHD. I love rabbit holes. So I outlined, and I'm a good 80% through my outline.
Woo!
I'm
That's
sitting at
fantastic.
about 80,000 words. I'm thinking I'm going to end up at around 100,000 and then, through editing, cut back.
Yes, and that's the thing. It's like you'll find out going through the editing process, and especially if it's your earlier work, more often than not, you do lose some of the extraneous matter. On the other hand, I have heard of authors actually get larger through the editing process. So you never know. For you, your book, what kind of age range is it supposed to be? Is this young adult? Is this children?
It's
Is
young
this
adult, so
okay?
I need to stay on the shorter end of
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
especially as my debut novel, just because suggestions are there for a reason, obviously.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's the thing is like I don't know if you're gonna try to query or self-publish straight away, but I'll say that do as I say, not as I do, because I did try to query my young adults, the first one of that my series, the Jed Chronicles, and the feedback I got was that it was too large because if you are trying to publish through a traditional publisher, they do have a pretty tight um word count that you have to kind of stay within. And so
No
I
rules
didn't
really
want to
in town
lose
if you
that
don't
much
mind
of
me
my
asking.
books, though. I decided, I was like, I've already self published before. I'm going to do it for this series too, because I didn't want to lose a third of my book. And I write long books.
I love that though. Like the worst part is when a book or a series is over. Like I almost don't read standalone books, which is bad because I'm writing a standalone book, but
Hmm.
I like the adventure that continues. How
Yeah.
long was your first one for the series, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm trying to remember. I think for the 12 tasks, it was like 130,000 words. And
Okay,
for
and it
young
is
adults,
YA.
yeah. Yes. And so for
Mm.
YA, I'm trying to remember what the cap is. And I don't know if it's 90,000, but if you're aiming for around 90,000, that's a good thing to go. You would have to verify
Mhm.
what the parameters are. I just know losing that many words was going to be too much, too much of the story. And I didn't want to split that book. I have other books with other stories that I wanted to tell in that series.
Right. No, I totally feel that. Um, so you asked if I was planning on like traditionally publishing or indie publishing. Oh, I've flip-flopped a couple of times, to be honest.
Okay.
And while I'm in the writing process, that's totally fine.
Of course.
Because either way, like I'm not to the point where like I've got to make a decision. And
Hmm.
so I'm hearing from a couple of different authors. You know, last night I was talking with Lauren and did a live with her, hearing about her experience. And I feel like a lot of the traditionally published authors that I hear from, like or see videos for, a lot of it's like, don't do this, don't do that. This was a bad
Hmm.
experience.
Hmm.
And so it was refreshing to hear a good experience. And it sounds like a
Yeah.
lot of it really depends on like the agent that you can nail.
Yeah. Yeah. The agent and your contract and the publishing house you end up going through because there are so many from small press, mid press, and of course, you have the big ones, but, and they all give you, there's pros and cons to everything. So for me, I've only been indie, so I can only tell you from the indie side, but
Mhm.
that's why it's nice to talk to a lot of people, and some people, like you mentioned, have had bad experiences both with indie and both traditional, and then other people will rave both things. So you just have to figure out what's right for you and decide going forward. But yeah, it's a
Yeah,
fun process. I know it's a little scary, but it's a fun process.
right. So one of my biggest concerns for indie publishing is obviously funding.
Mm,
Because editing is crazy expensive.
yeah,
Like I've been looking at a few different things and I am under no like delusion that my book doesn't need some overhauling. Um, and seeing like developmental editors at like 9 cents a word, I'm just
yeah,
like, oh.
yeah.
And you've done a Kickstarter for
Yes.
your debut novel, right?
I did it for, it's not my debut novel. I did a Kickstarter because I've been published for a while. The one I released earlier this year, which is the third book of my Portal Fantasy series, and that was my first Kickstarter. So I was kind of learning that whole game, trying to decide if it worked for me for a way to release books because I've heard from a few other authors who are getting into that kind of idea of using Kickstarter as a platform to launch their books and had some good things. So I was like, well, I might as well try it. So
Yeah.
kind of dipped my toes into that at the beginning of this year, and it went well for my first time. I want it to be better next time, but there will be a next time.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah,
Uh, by the way, hi to Richard. It's cool. I'm in Tennessee, not too far from you.
there you go. But yeah, so let me know if you have any questions in particular, or I can kind of just talk a little bit about my experience overall for that, since I know you were curious about Kickstarter.
Yeah, so I'm one of these people, I like to have all the little details ironed out. So,
Mhm.
like, how far, like, at what point of the editing process did you start the Kickstarter? I've seen it suggested that you don't run a campaign for more than a month. And I'm
Mhm.
sitting here and I'm like, there are thousands of dollars that need to go into this that I don't have.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then how did you make yours successful is another big.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. When it comes to a Kickstarter, you do have to understand, like, whatever you're promising to people, that you can afford it as well. Because yes, there is going to be some money on your end. There's definitely going to be a lot of time and energy building up all the materials you need. And one of the best things to do to kind of, well, one of the things I did at least is when I was curious, obviously ask authors that you have heard running or have run them, because that's a great thing. Also go on to Kickstarter itself and just, search books and see, physically go on other authors' pages and see what they're offering and their breakdowns, especially the ones that are, seemingly very successful. See what they're offering and see if that's something that works for you. In my experience, I did invest some money initially because I wanted to come up with some character art. So I had, some artist commission to give some like bonus materials that way. Obviously, I was offering signed copies of both my hardcover and my paperback in different levels, depending and because I have a little backlog in that series with two other prior ones, I had stages that way so people could, get the whole book series up to where we were at the point versus just the first book. But, authors do it for their first book. So you just have to see what you can offer to make it worthwhile for the quote unquote investor, your readers.
Yeah.
And character art's popular, maps, depending on what you're writing, a map may be something like a specialty map. Other authors get really fancy, and I'm not there yet, but they'll have like special release covers or limited release covers for the highest backers, or one of the authors who I worked, well, he kind of helped me with my Kickstarter is AP Beswick here on this platform, and every time he runs them, he does very, very, very well, and each time is doing better than the last. But the nice thing, just like any platform, you start building your followers, and going forward, if you choose to go and do another and another, you already have a backlog of material, gifts, books, because each
Right.
one, you're adding to it. So when you get to his stage, he has a number of books he can offer. He has a number of character art. He was offering sprayed edges for some of the biggest funders that he was trying to
Nice.
figure out how to spray edge his book. So you can do a lot. Um, One of the things I offered was a bonus gift. And I was like, a bonus gift, because in my back of my mind, I was trying to figure out what to offer. And I was kind of scrambling with my time. So I had enough gaps. So I was like, it's a secret bonus gift. What that meant was I had no clue when I kickstarted the Kickstarter. With that said, what ended up coming out of it was, since again, fantasy works well in with the gaming world and everything, so I ended up converting or taking the main character of that book series and having a specially made 3D printed tabletop role playing character that I hand painted, and I
I
came up with
saw
bonus
that.
material. Yeah, and so that was
I
because of
love
Kickstarter.
that.
So that was just a different way to approach it. But authors can do fancy bookmarks, it doesn't, you're just trying to encourage them with things they may not find on your website normally. And
Right.
again, you're hopefully reaching new people. So you're saying, hey, this is what I'm about. But there is a lot of background material you have to compile before you launch.
Right. Right.
So,
That's definitely good to think about. So the fun thing is my dad is an artist, and if I indie publish, he's
mhm.
going to be designing the cover, doing the map, doing the
Fun.
character art. I'm super excited for it. But then also, like, I think in thinking about like a Kickstarter or even like, setting up a table at different booths and
Mhm.
places, Nashville has all kinds of events. Um, is I think there's a 5-year-old inside of all of us that loves stickers.
Yeah.
And so I'm like my wheels are turning on like what kind of different like stickers and things that I could
Mhm.
do. because I feel like that's always fun, and people sometimes ask about them, and they see like, oh,
Mhm.
that's a neat design or whatever. But awesome. What what amount did you set your Kickstarter for?
And that's a good question. What I was told and advised that I will pass on, which is a good question, is even though in reality, when it comes to self-publishing your book, it can get pricey. You're paying for cover art, you're paying for editing, you're paying for the ISBN and the copyright, and
Mhm.
goes on and on and on. And then, of course, if you want to then expand into something like audiobook, that is another huge chunk. So one thing, obviously, the material, like if you just research how to do a Kickstarter, it'll say, what is your goal to get the minimal funding? What I was told to actually downplay it even more, because the trick about Kickstarter is doesn't matter how long you set the Kickstarter. You could have it for 2 weeks, you could have it for 2 years, however long you want to set your Kickstarter. You have to reach your goal amount, or else you don't get any of the funding. So
I didn't
set
know
your
that.
goal about, yeah, set your goal way low, underbid it, but you want to encourage people to continue to support even if you reach, when if you reach that amount. And so that's why a lot of, I think most Kickstarters will do what they call stretch goals. So then they'll be like, hey,
Mm.
if I reach this next threshold, everybody's going to get this bonus gift. And maybe it's an extra character art, and you go up these stretch goals and they can get fancy as you want them to, but that encourages more people to support your campaign, even if on paper it looks like you've reached your goal. And so for me, the value, because I do audiobooks, it would take me probably between 3 and 4 thousand to do audio and print and everything, and the cover arts and ISBN and editing for one book. It takes a lot to do what I want. But what I did was I bid really low, and I was like, hey, I'm asking for 650. That is
Mhm.
way under what I would need to do a book, but it was a goal that I felt confident that I could achieve within a month. And
Mhm.
as you've heard, a month is like the ideal range.
Right.
It does,
Right.
yeah.
I'm I'm so glad you said that about Kickstarter. Obviously, I haven't
Hint.
done a lot of research yet because
Mhm.
hopefully I would have known that. Um, that's really good to be thinking about.
Yeah.
How quickly did you reach the 650?
And again, there's a lot of strategy when it comes to Kickstarter, and some of it, it's kind of like the behind the scenes. What you would have to verify, but what I was told, again, um, through other people was if you reach, and I don't remember if it's 40% or 60% of your goal that first day, Kickstarter will then boost and kind of promote it for you to an extent. So it gives you an opportunity to reach new people. And so you really want to hit, if you can, that would be amazing. Now, obviously, that's not always the case for people, and that's fine. But it's a encouragement for you to really push that first day and make sure wherever you're marketing it, you really, talk it up prior to the release, and then go really hard with the promotion, just like release of any book. You're trying to, build up the buzz prior, so the day of, everybody hopefully bids in as much as possible
Right.
that day. And so depending on you and your friends and everything, what I was told was like, hey, talk to your friends, talk to your family, and say, get some people who are like, I'm definitely going to support you, and put some money into the kitty
Mm.
up front for you. Again, trying to just hit that threshold mark so Kickstarter helps you along the way and can boost you that way. But you have up until however long you set your Kickstarter to reach that, again, what I call the minimum goal, what they call
Right.
your actual goal, which should be your minimal goal.
Yes. Yes. That's awesome. I'm currently taking notes.
Oh no, go for it.
Yeah. Um, that's awesome. My
Yeah,
brain
there's
is
there's a
turning.
lot to think about when it goes on, and that's why, yes, there's definitely lots of strategy. Yes, to it. It's kind of like anything else. It's a little bit of a game you play with this, but again, it's one of those things that when you were talking about when do you decide to do a Kickstarter, honestly, I wouldn't really, unless you are comfortable with setting your goals and reaching them. I would almost, for the first time, make sure your book is ready before you start promoting Kickstarter. Because what you don't want to do, which I kind of almost had this big issue where I was giving myself a giant buffer. I was like, the book's going to be ready when I say it's going to be ready and release. And so I ran the Kickstarter, I was successful, and then because I was still in the editing process and life got in the way on my end, or my editor had some kind of emergency, family emergency, and had to put it on pause for a few weeks, I was running up to the wire just to release on time, because whenever you promise, you have to fulfill within that time frame you're promising. So again, give yourself enough buffer, and it would be ideal if your book was close to, if not done, before you started really pushing it, just because you want to make sure, especially your first release of your first book, make sure you have everything kind of ready and not scrambling like I was. And I published before, so it was kind of like, I can't believe I was like down to the wire for this book after all these years.
Right. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's really interesting. So, like, you would have already paid for a couple of rounds of editing, like, get this ready to go, and then did the Kickstarter kind of back fund some of your
Yeah.
personal
Yeah.
funding? Okay,
Yeah, and
cool.
for me, and again, because I have published before, the book was going to come out regardless
Right.
of Kickstarter. This was just to see if it would help along the way. Now,
Yeah.
there are authors who, again, give themselves plenty of buffer and will run the Kickstarter while they're still writing the books, and then, have everything. But if it's your first time, that may not be something you're comfortable with, or maybe it's something you are. I'm a person who I like to hit my deadlines, and it stresses me out if
Okay.
things are getting close to the wire. I like things done well in advance, so I would not function well in that kind of scenario. But I
Right.
definitely know a couple authors who do Kickstarters while they're still writing the books, but they figured out how to give themselves enough advance of saying, okay, at this point, here's my release date, and then you give yourself the buffer of between release date and whatever date is my fulfillment period, where you're trying to aim to send out your goodies to your supporters.
Yeah, Sam, you are so right.
Mhm.
This is what I'm thinking. Yeah. No, like, I would definitely want to have at least like the proof copy. You know what I mean? To like have and show. Because obviously with Kickstarter, no one knows me. Like, they don't know my habits. They don't know how many projects I've started and dropped. Like, that makes a lot of sense.
And that's one of the things that I've tried to revamp how I approach publishing in general is whenever you're comfortable with doing it, especially if you're going indie, get your ebook cover done. And there are plenty of designers that will say, we'll do your ebook cover, and then whenever because you can't do the print version until you know how many pages and the formatting, because that adjusts the spine, so they can't design the wraparound until you get closer in, but you can still get the front cover done early and use that for marketing. And it could be, again, because you need to show like something on the Kickstarter images to show what, people are bidding into. But also in general, for platforms like this, once you have a pretty cover and you're like, look at my cover, this is coming soon, that gets people excited.
Oh,
And even if
yeah.
you don't do Kickstarter, you'll probably build a buzz enough where you'll have readers ready to go purchase your book when you release, because they've been following your cover, following your process, following your progress, etc.
Right. Very
Mm-hmm.
cool. Very cool.
It's a lot to think about.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Lots to process. I've got notes I'm going to have to go back over after all this. Um, Awesome. So now I've seen, and this is getting off topic a little bit from Kickstarter, but I was just looking through some of the novels that you've published, and I noticed that you publish, or at least I think your most recent series is published through a publishing house. Did you start the LLC to do
Oh
this?
yeah, that is my own publishing house. Yes. So
Awesome.
I own, yeah. And it's one of those things like authors should, I do think authors should treat it like a business. So if you're going indie, get your LLC, and you come up with your imprint name, and you'll see a lot of authors that have like really cool imprint names, and it almost looks like and sounds like they are going through a mid-level, small press, whatever publishing house, and it's because they've come up with the LLC, and you are your own publishing house. And again, it just helps you to own your own rights. And so yes, so Faceporia Press is my publishing house.
That's very cool. Um, how do you do that? I'm sure it's a loaded question, but like I was just thinking about this the other day, and it's one of those things I'm like, I don't even know what I don't know at this
Oh,
point.
it's hard. There's so much, and that was why it took me forever to uh, kind of build up the steam I needed to do what I need to do to be a full-time author. Because when I was coming out with Asara's Claws, my debut book from way back when, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I did everything the wrong way. But yeah, so LLCs, um, you're asking me the whole format. It's been years since I went through it, but it is something that you go online and you register. You have to create a business, you register it, and through your state. And so I have to do my annual registration just to make sure that's all there. And it is a fee. It's another fee. I don't know if it state by state changes across or if it's a national flat rate fee. I think it's like $65 a year. But and I don't remember if the first time you do it, if it cost any more or if that's just the same across the board. But another fee to consider. But yeah, the once you fill out all the paperwork and explain what you're doing, I don't think it was that complicated to do, but it's been so long because right now I just need to renew, and it's pretty much easy saying everything's the same.
Yes.
Everything's the same, but you have to decide, working from if you work from your house, you have to decide where your office is going to be located. If it's your home address, if you using a different address, do you have a PO box where you want, or are you going to use your home, mailing? So you have to decide it's just a business decisions. But for the most part, if I'm trying to remember because I did my annual registration back in March, most of it is pretty straightforward.
Good. I've got to say, these details are the main things that make me a little nervous about
Yeah.
indie publishing. Especially being that I have a toddler and my husband and I are hoping to have a second kiddo at some point soon.
Yeah.
And like I've been through infant once and I know how like scattered and unworkable my brain was. Um, and I'm just seeing all the balls that could be dropped.
Well, for my thing is, especially if you're doing this in between kid 1 and 2, I would say just make good notes. Make good notes of here's everything you have to do. Your annual registrations, make sure you have a spreadsheet. I mean, if you're that kind of a person, I'm definitely a note taker, so I like lots of notes. And that helps me because once I go through the process once, for instance, going through the copyright application, I took detailed notes of this is what I plug in here and here and here. So every year I just pull up and be like, go. And it's pretty simple after that, but just things to think about. Wall calendar, there you go.
Yeah. I'm the person that has like my Google Calendar, my Microsoft Calendar. Like if I don't have 3 notifications coming up, I've forgotten something.
And this is not the way you want to do it. I do sticky notes, but then that gets very complicated and takes up my wall because I've done it up my wall.
Yes.
And columns and colors, and having an online calendar system that just bings you is probably an easier approach.
Coastal Wizard, that's an awesome point. I've heard some indie people like mention that, but I haven't really thought about that. That is an awesome point.
And
With
yeah, that's true too. Like there are certain write-offs you can do for your business, but for instance, I have not taken advantage of it because currently I live in a small apartment, so I don't have the room to truly designate a room for myself. But if you got to the point where you're like, this room is my office and nothing else, is not like a hybrid guest bedroom or whatever, it's your office, you measure the square feet and everything and you put it in, and they'll write off different aspects of your office space in your house if you are a true business like an LLC. So they're write-off perks, which is nice.
That's neat. I can't ever foresee myself having just a designated room, at least right
Yeah,
now at
me
this point in
neither.
life and housing markets and whatnot. But unless like my little table at the library, that's my go-to. But
Mm-hmm.
that's really cool. And
Uh,
I'm sitting here and like, well, what if my computer dies? What if this? What if that? So like, that's a
yeah.
really, really
And there you
good.
go. My mom chimed in and she did the googliness for Georgia because again that's the state I'm in. The LSC initial cost is $100 and the annual is right now is $50. And that
Perfect.
So it's not terrible, but it is another fee that you just have to
Right. Well, and all
budget
those
it.
little things add up
Yeah,
so quick.
they can. And so, but like, and it's hard. It is a hard thing to do, to finance your first book, and maybe it's something where you're like, I'm going to be a little cautious, and I'm going to do it in stages and release the ebook first and get some funding and then go back and do paperback or whatever it is. But because there are costs and fees, editing being a big one, cover design being usually a big one for people, but sometimes you know someone who would break a deal for you, and that's nice. All the
I
perks.
am incredibly blessed by like the support group that I have just in my family and my friends, and I mentioned like my dad doing the cover and some of the art for me. But yeah, like I've my grandfather is your. Where do you live, by the way, Catherine? Are you anywhere
I'm
near
in
the
Georgia,
south?
so the East Coast, so
Okay,
kind of
that's right.
not
Okay,
that far from
yes.
you. Yeah.
So you kind of get this picture, like, your little, like, sweet Southern little old man.
Hmm.
Like, this is my grandfather. And, just kind of taking me to the side at one point. I heard about your book, and I just want to let you know we're going to make this happen. You let me know what you need. We're going to do it. And I'm
Oh,
like, Papa, you're so sweet, but I don't think
that's
you have an
sweet.
extra 5,000, but that's whatever. Um,
That is sweet. And um there are pros and cons. I would not suggest cutting, certain costs, because again, having a good editor, you're gonna get your
right.
bang out of the book. Same thing for getting a nice cover off from the get go. But there are authors, and I'll admit I'm trying not to encourage it, but there are authors who took what they could get at the beginning, was able to finance it, and then updated material after the fact. I would say try to invest, editor and cover right off the
Yes.
bat, and then audiobooks can come later if you choose, and other kind of investments can be later if you choose. You don't need character off art off the back, and you don't need to expend all that kind of stuff,
Right.
unless that's something you really want to do as part of a marketing or extra sales. Those
Yeah.
are
The perfectionist in me would not let it be seen, like other
yeah,
than like for beta readers,
yes.
outside of a few rounds of editing. And we've got some money put back for this stuff, but just part of it looking forward in the long run of just house financials and stuff. The Kickstarter was a big thing to think like, okay, this is really cool. Like you can, I mean, technically you're kind of selling books like from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but like the
Anyway,
concept of a Kickstarter is to help kickstart whatever it is. So
yeah,
most people are understanding, saying, hey, I'm going to support this Kickstarter now, knowing that the funds you get from it will then have to be put into play to then finance whatever
right,
project you're making. So a lot of people are pretty comfortable, as long as you don't promise it tomorrow. You promise it, okay, within
right,
6 months, this is when you're going to see this book. And then you can buffer it out, and that's totally fine, as, that is what it's there for, is to finance
right.
projects. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I like what you were saying though, just about being smart about not putting it out too long. And you could even, like I said, have it kind of kicking back into personal expenses, once you've already done this.
Hmm.
I really like that. One thing I was wondering, you mentioned, some of your marketing and like things earlier. What have been some of the marketing strategies that you've found that like work the best for you?
Oh,
Especially being in like fantasy fiction, because that's right where I'm at.
I mean, this platform is great just to reach a variety of new people, and um, just in general, as a writer, and you're at that perfect stage that you're writing to your goal of your first book. This is the time to pick whatever platforms. I would say don't try to do them all right away, because you don't want to overwhelm yourself, but pick a couple, and you're already on this platform, so that's great. And talk about what you're doing, talk and kind of what you've been doing, is saying, hey, here's where I am, here's what my book's kind of about, here's the stages. And maybe you have a bad day and you can talk about it. You have a great win or achievement, saying, hey, I finished chapter whatever. That's great too. And you build again that buzz, so when you're ready to publish, you're there. When it comes to stuff like advertising, I've done there's been times where I've run ads on Facebook and Amazon, and they've done very, very well. But ads are tricky, and then there's the times when they won't pull in any money, and you're constantly spending money on those. So that's tricky, and that's something I would probably hold off unless you're really confident on taking that leap, because ads are no guarantee. You're investing money into them, but there's no guarantee you're going to get your return. But social media is one of the great ways to do it. Starting building a newsletter is another one that's recommendable. A lot of people will say, so if you're interested in, the nice thing about newsletters is, again, can't guarantee you're going to make sales off of subscribers, but it's a way for you to directly talk to a consumer, a reader.
Right.
And if any platforms kick the bucket, as long as they're subscribed to you, they have a way to reach you in a way you can notify them of what's going on minimally, in case worst case scenario and all social media disappears. They still have a way to reach you. So that's why a lot of people like newsletters too, as a
Yeah.
way to build people. And this is a great time to start working on that too, and just say, hey, right now, because you don't have a book, that's totally fine. Just say, here's my little thing of the week, and here's my update. Well, or monthly. I do monthly. This month, this was some of the goals that I've achieved, and these are some things. Put a picture of your cute kid. Talk about who you are as a person. People want to know you, and you can create a newsletter without having a book.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I've got to say, a couple of weeks ago, I started an Instagram account,
Mm-hmm.
and so this is really sad. I started my TikTok account this past December.
Mm-hmm.
So I've only been on TikTok for like, a few months now, and it's the
Yeah.
first time I've ever been on TikTok. I started Instagram just a few weeks ago, and it's the first time I've ever been on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like a terrible millennial. But anyways, um, I realized really quickly that I am not cut out for Instagram. Like
It's harder.
everything that I see popping up is like this beautifully like orchestrated picture and perfect lighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here on TikTok just to kind of be silly and quirky
Mm-hmm.
and like Sunny was saying, sell myself.
And that's
And
why, like,
so it's just the
oh, sorry.
difference is interesting.
Oh yeah, and each social media platform is very different. And as you said, for me, Twitter's it's verbal but not visual. And Instagram's visual predominantly. And then you have this one, which is like a video based, but you can be, less polished than what usually people perceive for something like Instagram. Now, I've tested this out, and it's starting to work for me, and I've seen it work for other people, where you take the videos you post, you create on this platform, and there are apps that will, sorry, clock app, when you hear this, will make sure you don't have that little branding logo when you download your video. It'll
Yeah.
remove that. And then you just re-upload them on Instagram as your post of the day. And for whatever reason, posting the videos I make on this as reels over there has started to draw attention to my Instagram. But that was something I had to figure out after a while.
That's awesome. Okay, I've got to point out this comment. Paula, I will run to your chaos goblin corner of Instagram. Like that, yes.
I
Please.
love that.
However we do this, I'm all in for it. Let me know what I need to do.
Yeah, there you go. But like I said, you can decide what works best for you, because someone who's really good at Instagram may be horrible on Twitter, or someone very good
Right.
at Twitter may be horrible on Facebook. So you just have to feel out what works best for you.
Mhm.
And I would obviously be on one, and you're on, Book Talk, and that's good.
Yeah.
But then you can decide to what extent beyond that you want to do it.
Awesome. So cool. Let's see. Does anybody have a question? I've asked my Kickstarter questions. I'm extremely ADD, so as something pops to my head, I'll just.
No, 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 no. It's fine. It's fine. But yeah, I mean, really the best part of starting early to talk about your progress and what you're coming out with, that's the best thing, because you're going to have a head start that I didn't do, because I just wrote the book, put it out there, waited 2 years wondering why no one bought the book, because I didn't market, I didn't talk about myself, I had no platform to build off of. And so starting early is like a great way, even before you have a book. So
Awesome. Yeah.
yeah.
Paula's got a question here. I'll give you a second in that. Um, when did you put out your first book? Like what year?
2016 was my first one.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so it's been a few years, and just learning what works for me and how to, because just practice makes perfect. Writing has gotten quicker. I figured out how to layer and stagger things, so I always have something being edited at different stages while I'm writing new material, and because of that, it sped up my release process. So I'm able to do several releases each year, and that's helped me a lot. But it's just something you have to kind of, you know, get used to, practice, and figure out what works best for you. Because there are definitely authors who only put out a book one every 4 years, and that's their max capacity, and that's fine. Then there are others who turn them out far quicker, and that's fine too. You just have to figure out what works best for you long term.
Yeah. Paula had a question here about Kickstarter. If I do a Kickstarter and get a bunch of unofficial pre-orders through that, will it hurt my pre-order rate on Amazon and through bookstores? Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about. So do these like count as pre-orders?
No,
Okay.
no, because yeah. So what they're doing is they're buying, yeah, they're buying your book before it's released. So yes, in one sense, it's qualified as pre-order, but it's not going to have any connection with Amazon. And what it will do is, when you release, again, the point of Kickstarter is to help fund the project.
Right.
So you're trying to just make sure you have the funding to at least cover your minimal expenses right off the bat, versus putting out the book, putting up the money up front, and it may take you a while to earn it back before you even get to a chance to make profit. Understanding that, no, this will not allow you to have pre-orders, because whoever's buying something on Kickstarter, that's Kickstarter. If someone
Right.
buys pre-order on Amazon, that's Amazon, and they don't really cross over. Um, so some people like to have a lot of pre-orders on Amazon,
Mhm.
but this one, again, the purpose of a Kickstarter is to help fund and reach your goals. And these people are usually expecting, they're getting signed copies, versus when you get something on Amazon, it's not going to be signed. So the perk of
Right.
buying it there is you're getting a signed copy and maybe personalized. You can add that feature to be like, dear so and so, and they're getting a special book versus something they can buy at any time
Right.
online. So, but yeah, you're not going to see those being pre-orders on Amazon.
She also makes another interesting point. Um, do you slash can you as an author then make like a big pre-order through Amazon to fulfill what you'd be sending to your Kickstarter people? And could that count?
Questioning what do you mean by that? Because
Like, could you as the author make like a big pre-order for
like,
books?
I mean, you can have your book on pre-order for Amazon, but anybody who's buying it, pre-ordered through Amazon, that's again through Amazon.
Right. I'm saying, could
As
you make an order for your book?
pre-orders only apply for ebooks. So
Ah, okay.
you can't, and
Okay.
so if you're, for instance, like I'm an author who's currently exclusive through Amazon, and so for me, and I specifically say this in the material, all that fun material that I pitch about what I'm about and why things take as long as it does and all that, it's because I can't order hardcovers or paperbacks until the publication day. As soon as it publishes, then I can go in and order what they call author's copies. So that's when I get my stuff, and that's when I turn around, sign them, stamp them, send them back out. Um, Other people who are wide, meaning they maybe go through a program like Ingram Sparks to print out some of the stuff. Some of them will order, because you can pre-order physical copies through Ingram Sparks
Okay.
and get them, so then you can turn around for something like Kickstarter a little sooner. I don't do that because I'm yet to jump over to Ingram Spark, but also know Ingram Sparks is far more expensive when you're printing out a book. So
Right.
your return is going to be less.
And they're also now charging royalties, right? Basically.
Yes, they've dropped their update fee, or their, I don't remember
Hmm.
what it's called. Again, I'm not an Ingram Spark person. I don't know the terminology, but yeah, you used to have to pay them to upload a file, and anytime you wanted to edit your book, you had to pay them another update fee. Now they've dropped all that, but they do have like this royalty system where you pay. They take out a little bit of each book.
Yeah.
So pros and cons, pros and cons.
That's another thing that makes my brain hurt, or all these little decisions to
There
make.
are. There are a lot to begin with. And then here's the thing. Whatever you decide, you're not stuck with. So if you decide to go Kindle Unlimited and that's how you want to start off with, as long as you fulfilled your requirement, which I think if you're taking a book off Kindle Unlimited, it's like, I don't know if it's 2 months or whatever that time frame that, you have to give them a notification buffer. But as soon as that hits, then you can then go wide with it. And vice versa. If your stuff was wide, but you were like, I want to try Kindle Limited, you can do that too. It's, you just have to figure out what you want to start with. And if you're not
Yeah.
happy with it, you can still go another route. Yeah. 1%. Yeah, 1% of each book will add up over time. But
Yeah.
again, the nice thing about Ingram Sparks is it allows you to be found in Barnes and Noble and other bookstores and be able to get into those brick and mortar places, the few that still exist in the world, and stuff like that. Because one guy, if you haven't followed him, I would always suggest following my friend Jason Duro, because he's like the guru of all things self-publishing at this moment on this platform. I highly suggest him. He's fantastic. And but he was talking about one of the questions someone asked him was doing the wide distribution on Kindle. What does that mean? And by definition on paper, what it means is if you click this, Amazon is allowed to distribute it to other bookstores. But because it's Amazon and Amazon is also a publishing house and a bookstore itself, the whole idea of competition, most bookstores won't buy from Amazon, even though they could, they won't, because, that is a competitor. So if you want to be wide, something like Ingram Sparks or Draft to Digital may be the way to go. Amazon probably at this point still has by far the best the best cut for the author themselves on sales, even though I would love it to be better. We always want it to be better than it is.
Yes.
But at the moment, they do pay us out the best.
Do you have a site that like you sell directly from and like could get a better cut?
So what happens is, again, going through, at the moment, I'm exclusive through Amazon. So everything I get, all my author's copies still funnel that way. Now, to get a better cut, there is a kind of working around, which is I order author's copies through Amazon, and then I'm paying shipping and I'm paying the essentially just cost of the materials and the printing fee. And so getting them in, I can then turn around and then offer signed copies on either my website, which I'm hoping to kind of convert to. I right now sell them through Etsy, and because I have a shop up there, and saying, hey, if you want to buy direct, you get a signed copy. I'll throw in a bookmark, and you get the perk of having a cool signed copy. I get the perk because I make more off that sale. Because, yes, I'm only paying Amazon, the shipping to ship the books to me and the printing and material fees versus going online, and then they take a cut on top of that as well.
Have you had a good experience so far with Amazon's like printing quality?
I'm very, I've not, again, having only used them, I can't compare. Talking to other authors who've compared, again, go and check Jason Duro. He has lots of conversations about the differences between his Ingram Sparks books and his Amazon books. But what it sounds like is Amazon's, especially their paperback, is higher quality than what Ingram Spark has at the moment. And the difference is Ingram Spark with the hardcover has a dust jackets, which I know a lot of people like. And right now, Amazon's hardcover doesn't allow you to do that. But I've heard if you compare them, next to each other, it sounds like a lot of people think Amazon has just a slightly better material and quality print than Ingram Sparks. With that said, I know all my personal experience, and I've heard from other authors, you're always going to get an order somewhere that they're going to, whoever's printing it out is going to send you something with damaged books, and it's going to drive you crazy. Because we don't like that, and that's a boo on anybody who does that, but it happens on, I think every platform I've heard has had that oopsie before. So.
I like this. Sam asks, do you notice Amazon's author copies are sometimes slightly sloppier quality than customer copies?
And again, that's hard for me to say because I'm not ordering my book as a consumer, and it's hard for me to know when I'm ordering other books on Amazon which ones are print on demand and which ones they have in their stock. So I can't be sure personally unless I know another author who's like, my book, I'm self-published, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But like I said, some of that is, I don't know why. But yeah, I've noticed, again, goes into when I put bulk orders for author copies, sometimes I have issues where a few of them come in damaged for whatever reason. And I don't know if it's because I'm ordering bulk and the way they ship the big box, things are rattling around versus a singular book coming your way, or if it's they're just rushing one out and wanting to look better on the other. I would feel like that would be really hard for them to do because they're just seeing orders come in. So I can't say for sure if that's why sometimes author copies come in damaged. But again, I've heard that same thing happens through Ingram Sparks and Draft to Digital as well.
Okay. So, and this is me just like hearing like different terminology, some for the first time. So I'm assuming the print on demand is Amazon prints it and sends out the orders, and in stock would be like you have it printed through a third party and give it to them so they have it in stock and can send it out.
Yes.
Okay.
And so when you're publishing through Amazon, it's print on demand. So that's why it saves them space. It's literally when someone goes online and it's like, I'm going to buy the book, they're literally printing out the book the next day and putting it in the mail for you. And for anybody who's printing through them, that's what they're doing. It's print on demand, and that's why they don't have 1,000 books. And it takes author orders longer to get because they are printing out every book. If you're ordering 5, if you're ordering 500, they're printing them all out and then boxing them and sending them your way. But yes, for other authors, like people who are doing random tour or any of these other, the big publishing houses, they're printing them out in their own vicinities and then having Amazon stock them.
Got it. Cool.
On the shelf.
Very cool.
It's a whole world.
I'm just processing everything right now.
Well, that's the thing is like publishing is a business, and as an indie author, you're not only the writer, you're a marketer and publisher, and the micromanager of all these other facets. So it is a job, be it a full job after your normal job, or it is your only job, but it is a job.
How long have you been writing full time?
It's kind of complicated because I kind of kick-started off to be a full-time author, but I was also an artist as well. So I kind of, when I needed more funding for my books, part of it, I was getting that through my pet portraiture career. So I'm able, to flip-flop and allow both of them to kind of fund me. If I was just doing one, I would say I would be not ready to say I'm full-time author, just an author, as of yet. So I still kind of counterbalance it with my art career.
That's really cool. And you may not want to get into art career on this platform with it being towards your book, but like what kind of art do you do out of curiosity?
I do pet portraiture. It's in the style called reverse glass painting. So the glass is my canvas versus actual canvas, and I paint in a mirror image fashion. And it sounds really weird, but they're fun. I love them. I like having a very realistic look to the animals, but a very bright background. And they're just, for me, I love them. They're fun.
Do you
and I sell those on Etsy.
I need to look those up. That sounds cool. I was curious, since you do art, did you do like any of your own character art, like in marketing your books?
No, because I can't do people. I do animals, but I don't do people. And so, yeah, I've never done my own character art or anything, so I've avoided that. And that's why I let professionals who are, that's their thing, do the cover design. And I've, again, with the Kickstarter, being able to give me an excuse to go and fund some character art. I, worked with different various artists of means, but Yeah, I would not do people myself. That's not my skill set.
I
And we'll get.
mean, I'd be doing stick people, so that's about my extent.
And you never know, maybe that works for the book you're working on, but maybe not.
It'd have to be really creative about it. I don't know. I could probably flip it somehow, but
Thank you. But yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Let me ask just for reference for this video. You're on this platform, you're talking about starting to dabble with Instagram. Not sure you like it yet, but are you found anywhere else at the moment, or are you pretty much here on Book Talk as your home?
Yeah, just book talk. I post things through my personal Facebook page just to keep a
Hmm.
lot of, family and friends updated on book progress and things like that. Like I mentioned, I've got an amazing support system back home in Kentucky, and yeah, it's mainly been book talk. And I've loved the community here. Like it's
Yeah.
just so cool, especially among like indie authors and
Hmm.
people supporting one another and cheering everybody on. Um, I think, and I'm sure there are certain circles on TikTok that like this is true for, but I don't know. I'd heard like bad vibes from it, or people just being harsh or whatever. But like the book talk side of TikTok has been fabulous.
Oh yeah, that I was gonna say again. That's where I hub, so that's what I know.
Yes.
But I do like this platform. Like you said, there's so much camaraderie even within other authors, and um, so far my experience is most people want to help each other out, and
Yeah.
so that's always a nice thing. I know I've heard of that not being the case for everyone, but I've been thankfully blessed that that has been the case for me, where I like the community and it's worked out very well, and people are just very friendly and welcoming and encouraging other people to ask a question. And I'll tell you at least my experience. Again, one experience from one author may not be another author's experience, and what works for me may not be what works for you, but that's why it's nice to be able to talk and kind of have encouragement from different people, and hopefully figuring out what you don't know, because
Oh,
it's always hard to
definitely.
ask things when you don't know what you don't know.
Right? Yeah, I joked the other day. I feel like 75% of my videos are like, "Hey, I don't know this. What do you guys think?"
Oh yeah, and I think that's fantastic. I wish I was better about that. I think because sometimes I'm a little nervous about asking people for help, because it's kind of like I should know this by now, right? But
Always
regardless,
room to grow.
exactly. Never stop challenging yourself to be better. But
Yeah.
yeah. Now, let me ask you one other thing. I know we're rounding up the hour, but
Yeah.
let me ask you another thing. Do you have a writing website right now or anything like that? Or is that something you want in the future? Or are you going to just keep that in the back burner until you're a little further along?
Yeah, no, I have the domain name that I wanted was available,
Hmm.
and so I went ahead and bought it
Yay.
through Bluehost, and I've done kind of like a blog site before,
Okay.
and so I'm not good at it by any means, but at least it won't be just like a white page with text. I haven't put any time into it yet, honestly. I'm planning on getting it up and running as I'm like editing, sending things like to and from some of my alpha readers, and then
Hmm.
trying an editor and beta, things like that.
Yeah.
Just because I have to constantly have a project that
Oh
I'm
yeah. Oh yeah.
and
And
once
the thing
those
about
things are out of the way, I have a 3 book series that I've got on a back burner.
Hey, see, good. So you already have stories lined up, and kind of
Yes.
going back to like the financing, websites cost money, and I get that. I
Mhm.
found a lot of value with mine, but there are ways around it if you can't afford it yet, like having a landing page, which that's, I know, one set of terminology, or doing something which a lot of people do here in general, with or without websites, is having a link tree kind of site, so you can at least send people, here's my newsletter, here's my TikTok, here's my Instagram, even if you didn't have, and here's,
What is a landing?
direct links to your books on Amazon. And even if you
Yeah.
don't have a website, you can have something like that where you have a lot of information on one page.
Yes. What is a landing page out of curiosity?
landing page, well, it depends on what you want it to do, but it kind of gives you an impression that you have a website, but it doesn't function like a full website. So you have a link and it sends you and it has whatever you're saying. Usually I see it as a way to funnel people to a newsletter, but some people use a landing page if they don't have a website and say, here's some information, here's like the sign up, all that kind of stuff, and then you click and it's a lot of newsletter programs. So I use MailerLite, but there's also MailChimp. They have that option already. If you're doing the newsletter through you can create landing pages as well because they'll offer that.
Yeah. One other thing that I'm like saying, oh, that's a problem for future Kennedy. I'll think about those things once I've got the draft done, and whenever my eyes are crossing from editing, I can work on something different for a minute.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing is like, this is a great time to be like, yes, write the book. That is the important part. Don't forget to write the book because of all this noise. But it's also nice to be like, okay, here's the strategy. This is the next thing I want to aim for, and the one after that, and here's some baby steps and coming up with stages of saying, okay, my next stage, this is my goal or goals, and I'm going to start working toward that as well. But yeah, baby steps, because there's so much out there, especially when you're starting up, it can be overwhelming. So start slow, work big.
Yes. It's always helpful for me though to like talk to authors who have done it. It's like, okay, it is possible. And it just takes that extra like work, and it's encouraging to know that I can go to people with questions and be like, okay, wait, I've got this and this and this. Like, what am I forgetting?
And another thing is like I had talked kind of like this with the author A.K. Mulford, who's on the site, before she got her big deal. But at the time, she was very advocating because what she did before she started even releasing the series is she tried to consume all the information because, again, she didn't know what she didn't know. So she would like find podcasts about writing and publishing and kind of, podcast and books and, again, any kind of YouTube videos and anything she could just listen to because all of a sudden she found out, oh, let me think about this. I never thought about this. And that kind of allowed her to learn a lot of the stuff that she didn't realize she needed to learn and set up her platform fantastically, which was one of the reasons why she was so successful right off the bat, is because she took the time, and she said she took a lot of time kind of just allowing herself to absorb everything and figuring out what she needed to do to make it work for the right off the bat, which again, I did not do that. It's still taking me time to catch up. So that's not a bad thing to do, is look for informative podcasts or YouTube channels or books about writing, publishing, and things to think about, because they may tell you something you're like, I never thought about that.
Yeah. Now, I've got to ask, how old were you in 2016 when you published your first book?
How old am I? How old was I then? Oh my goodness. Well, I was in my, it's probably like 28, 27, 28, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Awesome.
I had to count backwards, but
I'm 27, so like I'm like, I have hope. I can do this.
Yeah, and there are people who've done very successfully, and their first books were published in their 70s. Right. Who knows? So you're never too old to make a break when it comes to writing. So
I know. And I hear that, and like I would encourage anyone using that phrase, but when it's yourself, it's like, oh, why haven't I done this yet?
Yeah. Oh no, I had that talk when I was a teenager, and I was like, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to do so well and everything, this is going to happen. And then Aragon came out with Christopher Paolini, and he was my age, and he did what I wanted to do. And I was like, oh no, I'm behind. How dare he publish at like 16, 17? And what am I doing with my life if I'm not at that stage? But yeah, so it's okay. We all have that talk.
Right. Well, it's also one of those things where I'm like, I'm so glad that I didn't do it sooner, because I would look back at it, like, I feel like my early 20s, I really came into my sense of self, and confidence in myself, and like I would have been so embarrassed to see what I put out to the world like 6-7 years ago.
Thing is, no matter here, this is the truth. This is the truth. Your first book is going to be your first book. It doesn't matter if you wait to publish it 9 years from now. It's going to be your first book. And what you want as a writer is your second book to be better than the first, and the third to be better. So no matter what, yes, when you go back to your first book, it should be the worst one you ever written, and it should be like, I can't believe I did it back whatever that time was, because you want to continue to improve. But sometimes you just have to make that effort to put a book out and say, okay, now it's time for the second one. Let's go.
That's a really good point. That's a really good. And I have to agree with Matt. I did think you were like 26, 27.
It's the lighting and my allergies. I don't know. Either way.
That's the first good thing I've ever heard contributed to allergies.
It's that glow I have right now. It's like all the oak pollen I have. It's driving me crazy. Anyhow, you never know. But yeah, let me know if you have any other questions or anybody else listening wants to chime in. And then if not, we'll do our wrap up, because we actually have done a whole hour's talking.
I know, it's flown by.
Thank you for the roses. Woo! We're doing fantastic. But yeah, and at any point along your writing career path, you want to do another one of these, feel free. I mean, I try to arrange them weekly. It just so happened that just how everything fell, I'm doing 3 back-to-back, which is not what I typically do. I usually do 1 a week, but it just worked out that way. But yeah. What do I know about traditional publishing in general? I can't say much in the sense that I've always been indie. I do know there are perks about it, and I do know there's a lot of things people assume you're going to benefit from, which is not necessarily the case. For instance, if someone's thinking, I'm going to go try traditional publish, and they're going to do the marketing, they're going to do the advertising, they're going to do all that for me, that's not the case, especially not anymore. Now, if you are what they think is that, that diamond in the rough, they'll invest a lot of time, especially the big 5, into you, but small presses don't usually have the funds. The marketing, advertising is still going to be on you. Mid-press, they may share some of it, but, you're still going to be doing a lot of that effort too. And even people with the big 5, if you're not one of the top names, you're going to have to do it yourself, or some of it to yourself. The nice thing about going traditional is they do help you get right off the bat into a lot of bookstores. You will find your books in Barnes & Noble right off the bat and stuff like that, which as an indie author, you can, but you have to be smart about how you approach indie publishing and make that effort to make those connections so you can get your books into those same stores. But there's pros and cons about everything. There are definitely authors here that will talk up one and trash the other, and then vice versa. So as indie, my experience, I just know it's not as dreamy as it sounds like, because you can get years to find an agent, and the agent doesn't guarantee you're going to find a publishing house. It's tough. It's tough both ways, but it's rewarding regardless when you have your book. So that's my piece.
I love it. Katharine, I'd definitely love to do another one of these. I'll reach back out once I'm like close to typing the end, and that gives me shivers thinking about it. Because I'm sure by that point I will have a ton more questions of like, oh heck, what do I do now?
Well, like for instance, you'll have to decide, do you want to type the end? I know a lot of people like that. Or do you say to be continued, or you just end the chapter and go from there? Things to think about.
Right? I think I need that moment, like personally, like even if I don't video it, but like of just typing like the end to be like, oh, okay. I finished the draft. Now you go back to the beginning.
And then start the process again. And the joys of the editing part, you will realize soon enough. I say as sarcastically as I can. Yes, self-publishing does take a lot of time. And but if you're saying you just understand, especially on this platform, you'll meet a lot of authors who figured out how to self-publish, raise kids, have a full-time job. They've done it. It just may take you a lot longer to turn around a book than someone else, but you still can get there.
Right.
And everybody has to start somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Cathartic, the end. There you go. Yes.
yes, that's what I'm waiting for.
It is definitely achievement. And like you said, especially if you're gonna type it, even if you're gonna delete the end afterwards and decide you don't need those actual words, type it, film it, post it on here, and people will be applauding you because that is still an achievement. So
Right? Yeah,
yes.
I won't print
Thank you.
the end, but for myself,
Yeah.
I have to type the end.
Yeah, I understand. I think I did that too when my first book. It's been a long time, but I'm not a person that usually uses those words at the end of a book. But I think I did that. I think I typed it just for the satisfaction.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
it's just one of those like I've done it things. It's checked off my bucket list.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I need to turn around and start doing my editing process. But like I said, just let me know when you get to the point you want to do one of these again in the future. And everybody who's chimed in, thank you. If you're not following her, follow her progress because I know you should be talking about it. You should be
Oh
telling people
yes.
about it. You should
Oh
be
yes.
excited about it. But
Lots of
yes.
fun things to come.
Absolutely. Well, thank you and have a fantastic rest of your afternoon or evening or morning, wherever anybody else is around the
Thanks,
world,
guys.
and have a wonderful day.
Bye.